Today's project is a glaze test with different firing temperatures. I'm exploring the potential of my current glaze at different firing temperatures. Normally, I fire to cone 6 or higher. Although my program is set for cone 6, I hold the maximum temperature for 60 minutes, which causes the pyrometric cones in the kiln to register between cone 7 and 7.5, depending on their position. During one firing, there was an issue, and the temperature only reached 1163 Celsius, with the pyrometric cone indicating cone 4. However, despite the lower temperature, some of the glaze results were quite impressive. If only one glaze works at cone 4, it wouldn't fit with my firing schedule. But if I found 3 or more glazes that work, that would be fantastic. For the test, I'm using small sake cups. The glaze appearance changes both on the inside and the outside of the pot, and this small piece gives me a full picture of how the glaze behaves. To quickly make several sake cups, I throw them from the hump. This is a buff stoneware clay, which I use for most of my colored glazes. When I'm throwing from the hump, I only center the top part of the clay where I'm shaping the cup, rather than the entire lump of clay. Centering a large amount of clay can be hard work, but by focusing just on the portion I'm using, it's much easier. Although the lower part of the clay isn't perfectly centered, it's stable enough to support the top. I prefer to leave throwing marks on my sake cups, so I make the wall thin enough that trimming isn't necessary. I compress the base with my fingertips to prevent an S-crack occurrence. Next, I push in the bottom using my right index fingernail, which create a clear line for cutting the cup with a string. Here are the bisque-fired cups. Since I'll be using a single dip glazing method, I apply wax resist to the footring to reduce the amount of cleaning needed in that area. I first remove surface dust with a damp sponge, and then I apply wax around the footring. At the moment, I'm using wax resist from the Myco brand, which works well, but I'm on the lookout for a more fluid water repellent medium. I give the thorough stir, ensuring I lift any settled material from the bottom. I dip the cup into the glaze for just a second for this glaze, ensuring both the inside and the outside are submerged at the same time. This should result in an even glaze thickness throughout. I rotate the cup to avoid any drips accumulating at one point. There are standard guidelines for glaze thickness, but they are just that, guidelines. Each glaze behaves differently and preference vary too. I usually rely on the feel of it with my fingers, though I'd like to try using a hydrometer one day. Next, I clean the footring with a damp sponge. The wax resist makes this part of the process simple. At this stage, I can also adjust the glaze thickness. Sometimes I'll clean off any excess drips, but this time I'm curious to see how they turn out. So I only smooth the tongue mark and leave the rest. For this test firing, I'm using kiln shelf gas, even though it's a low cone firing and I don't expect any drips. It's always good practice. Here is the original firing of my Indigo's Dream Glaze. The biometric cone reads cone 7. I love the floating blue effect with a mist-like blue, descending like a veil of night. Now, here is the result of this latest test firing. It's the exact same glaze, but this time the biometric cone registered cone 4. The glassy texture formed nicely, and the cobalt created a solid navy blue. This is another test piece where I accidentally used much less cobalt. Again, the biometric cone showed cone 4, and this resulted in a lovely wisteria-like blue. These three pieces all use the same glaze, but with different firing temperature and, in one case, less cobalt. Here is the original firing of my Yomogi Japanese mugwort glaze. The pyrometric cone reads cone 7. If you look closely, you will notice the recipe is identical to the previous glaze, except for the colorant. It has incredible depth in the glaze. The only issue is that it's a bit too runny at cone 7. I may need to adjust the ingredients to prevent this from happening. That's a project for another day. Here is a test firing for Yomogi. The biometric cone showed cone 5. The glaze came out beautifully with a nice floating effect. Since I ran out of bisque-fired sake cups, I used a sake bottle instead. The glaze settled well at the base with minimal accumulation. I believe this could become a lovely floating green glaze at cone 6. Here is a test firing of the same glaze. The pyrometric cone indicates cone 4. The glaze formed beautifully again with a vibrant lime color. This is the same cup I was glazing earlier, and by leaving a thicker area of glaze, I can now assess how long to dip future pieces. The thinner area also have a shiny, translucent lime finish, which means I can use glaze thickness to create variations. There is a small area inside the cup where the floating effect appears. I suspect the inside of the cup reached a slightly higher temperature than the outside. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed watching the pottery process. Today's project was all about testing glaze at different firing temperatures. It's shown how one glaze can produce a range of interesting results depending on the temperature, and I don't even need to fire separately. Understanding which area of my kiln reach which temperatures allow me to achieve a variety of effects in a single firing. My glaze journey is far from over. If you enjoy the video, please subscribe and leave a comment. Happy creating, and I look forward to seeing you in the next pottery video.